There are moments on morning television that catch you completely off guard, not because something dramatic happens, but because something real does. Ben Shephard has been a fixture of British breakfast television for long enough that audiences feel they know him. The easy smile, the measured warmth, the way he navigates even the most emotionally charged interviews without ever losing his composure. Viewers trust him. They've watched him for years across GMB, Tipping Point, and beyond, and in all that time, he's kept his private life carefully, deliberately, away from the cameras. Which is exactly why, when he let something slip about his family, people noticed immediately. It wasn't a headline-grabbing confession. It wasn't a tearful breakdown or a rehearsed revelation clearly engineered for maximum engagement. It was quieter than that, and somehow that made it land harder. Ben Shephard admitted, in that disarmingly casual way of his, that he feels jealous of his sons. And the moment he said it, something in the studio atmosphere shifted almost imperceptibly. Because here's the thing about that kind of admission, it's not the sort of thing presenters say on live morning television. Fathers talk about pride. They talk about worry, about hope, about watching their children grow. But jealousy, that's an honest word. That's a word that requires a certain level of self-awareness to use without embarrassment, and a certain level of comfort to say out loud in front of millions of people eating their morning toast. Many viewers watching seemed to feel it instantly, that particular quality of realness that separates a genuine moment from a scripted one. It almost seemed as though Ben himself hadn't entirely planned to go quite that far. As though the conversation took him somewhere he hadn't mapped out, and rather than pulling back, he let it happen. And what he appeared to be expressing wasn't resentment, nothing so complicated or uncomfortable as that. It was something far more tender. The jealousy of a man who has worked hard his entire adult life, who has built a career on early mornings and long schedules and the relentless demands of live television, looking at his sons and seeing a kind of freedom, of possibility, of time, of an open road ahead, that he recognizes from his own youth, and perhaps misses more than he expected to. That's a deeply human thing to feel. And it's the kind of thing most fathers probably think but rarely say. What made the moment resonate so strongly with some audiences was precisely that vulnerability. Ben Shephard has always had an approachable quality on screen, but approachable and vulnerable are different things entirely. Approachable is professional, vulnerable is personal, and in that brief window, viewers got something personal, a glimpse behind the polished morning television exterior into the inner life of a man navigating parenthood the way most people do, with love, with reflection, and occasionally with emotions that surprise even himself. There's also something worth sitting with about the way he framed it. The word jealous carries weight. It carries honesty. He could have said something softer, that he admires their opportunities, that he's grateful they have more freedom than he did at their age. But he didn't reach for the comfortable word. He reached for the true one. And that distinction, small as it might seem, is what viewers online appeared to interpret as the emotional core of the moment. Some people watching began wondering, perhaps, about their own relationships with the generations below them, their children, younger siblings, or simply the version of themselves that existed before responsibility arrived and quietly rearranged everything. Because the most powerful television moments aren't always the ones that show us something new. Sometimes they're the ones that hold a mirror up to something we already feel but haven't quite named yet. Ben Shephard did that, almost by accident, on a morning show watched by millions. His sons, by all accounts from the little he's shared over the years, are at that extraordinary age, old enough to be individuals with their own lives unfolding, young enough that those lives still feel wide open in every direction. And watching that from the vantage point of someone who has already made his choices, already walked through the doors that close behind you, it's a quietly emotional place to stand. It's also worth noting that moments like this land differently when they come from presenters who don't routinely open up. If Ben Shephard spoke about his family every week, this admission might have washed over viewers. But because he guards that part of his life with such consistency, when something escapes the carefully held boundary, it carries extra weight. The rarity is part of what makes it feel significant. Some audiences began wondering, quietly, whether fatherhood has shifted something in how he thinks about his career, his schedule, the life he's built around the early alarm and the studio lights. Whether watching his sons step into their own independence has brought with it a particular kind of reflection that only arrives at certain chapters of a person's life. While nothing has been confirmed, and this is very much the territory of emotional interpretation rather than fact, there's a possibility that what viewers witnessed was a man in the middle of a genuinely meaningful personal season, allowing just enough of it to show. That's rare, on live television, from someone with his level of experience. And perhaps that's what stayed with people long after the segment moved on and the next story filled the screen. Not the specific words, not the precise context, but the feeling of having seen something authentic for a moment, unscheduled, unguarded, and entirely real. Maybe what viewers carry with them from a moment like this isn't just what Ben Shephard said about his sons. It's what it reminded them to feel about their own lives, their own people, their own quietly unspoken jealousies and loves. If you noticed something in that moment too, if it hit differently than you expected, drop it in the comments. I'd genuinely love to know what it brought up for you.